Take a person, take a story, take you on a journey. It's your take.
My guest today needs no introduction. He's a popular musician whose career began as a songwriter, writing several songs for The Who's Roger Daltrey, including his first solo hit, Giving It All Away. After signing to major record labels in both the UK and US, my guest became a well-known musical figure with several hits both sides of the Atlantic. These hits included The Show Must Go On, One Man Band, Long Tall Glasses, Moonlighting, You Make Me Feel Like Dancing, When I Need You, Thunder in My Heart, More Than I Can Say, and several others. In 2006, he made a return to the pop charts with a #1 hit record. His 1977 hit, Thunder in My Heart, was sampled by DJ Meck for the dance anthem, Thunder in My Heart Again. My guest has covered many songs by John Lennon and Paul McCartney. He's gone back to their catalogue of classics and released the new album, Nothern Songs. Joining me today on Your Take is Leo Sayer. We talk about Leo's musical journey as a songsmith and frontman, his many hit records, the highs and lows of the music industry, life in Australia, his latest album, and touring the UK this coming August. A very warm welcome. Thank you kindly for giving up your time today and being a guest on Your Take.
No worries. Nice to be here. Excellent.
I'm very much looking forward to talking about your life, your kind of musical journey, which has been 50 plus years in the music business. And obviously the latest release, which we mentioned in the introduction of classic Lennon and McCartney songs. But to begin with, I always like to turn the clock back and go back in time to kind of the very beginnings. And we go back to May the 21st, 1948, raised in Shoreham-by-Sea in Sussex. And I wanted to ask about your recollections of family and childhood life and just kind of paint a portrait of your parents, Teresa and Thomas, your relationship with them, and also your two brothers, Michael and Brian.
Oh, well, actually, Brian is alive, but Michael died in childbirth, funny enough. So actually I have a sister, an older sister, Kathleen. I think Michael was my mum's first attempt, and sadly never lasted. So I would have been one of four, but I'm one of three. I'm the middle child. So my sister is 3 years older than me, and my brother is 3 years younger. And my dad was an engineer at a place called Southlands Hospital, which is in the grounds. There was a house and right on a main road, the A27 road between Brighton and Worthing. And that's where I was born, in this little house, just inside the wall of Southlands Hospital on the A27 road. Yeah, 193B Upper Shoreham Road, as it was called. And I, it's a long time ago because I'm 74 this month. So, whoa, you're going back quite a few years. The first thing I think I remember is being turfed out of my pram by our dog, Joey. And I remember falling with a real lump. And here's a bit of sort of, bit where it pays forward, as it were, because I've recently taken on an incredible masseuse guy who does deep tissue work, which is fantastic. Gets all the, gets all the blood flowing, gets the circulation going, releases all the oxygen inside you. And this guy is an Uzbekistani gypsy, would you believe, who grew up as a healer, healing horses and animals and people, almost self-taught. So he's got these fantastic methods, and he's got an incredible insight and feel. And he felt the soles of my foot and the sole of one of my feet, and just instantly said, he said, now you you fell out of a pram when you were a baby. He knew nothing about me. He said, you fell out of a pram as a baby and almost crushed your skull. And he's right. And I've got a short neck and a very flat head, which is probably why I've got the propensity for always keeping this long. And he said, you know, basically, that injury stunted your growth. And since then, of course, he's trying to make me taller all the time. So you know, extending my legs or whatever. But it's true. And that was the first traumatic thing, I think, that because it was traumatic, it was the first big thing that I've always held in my memory. Other than that, I remember being in a very religious family. My parents, we used to call our house the presbytery, me and my brother, because the priests and the nuns from the school would come around all the time, and it was like you'd have to watch your language, you know. And it was a very strange kind of restrictive background, you know, that I came from. My father really didn't like anything to be unpredictable. You know, he was originally a Protestant, changed to being a Catholic to marry my mum. My mum was Irish background from Fermanagh, right on the border of North and South, just in the north. And she made him change to being a Catholic. We had in our youth, me, my brother and sister, in my youth, we used to go to Ireland. And so we'd spend every summer that we could, from the first day of leaving school in England, you know, to the last day we're being back to school. All that time was spent in the family's Vauxhall Cresta or whatever the car was at the time, going onto the ferry, having a rotten crossing to Ireland, and spending the summer in Ireland with all the Irish family, which was, for me, was fantastic because they were all kind of free and easy and you know, and imaginative and lively and colourful, and they made music. You know, my dad, my dad didn't play any music; he sang. But I mean, my granddad played the harmonica and the fiddle and would entertain us all the time. You see, so I was kind of in a completely different existence with you know, when I was in Ireland, and I'd come back from this magic to right back to life, you know, back to normal life. So I think that was inspiring and may have triggered the need and the want to be an entertainer or an artistic, creative person. You know, it came from there.
I want to stick on this background that you've painted for us, this portrait of coming from a religious background, an Irish Catholic family background. I wanted to ask what your memories are attending a Catholic senior school, and were you naturally academic, and which subjects kind of interested you the most and why?
Nah, look, I should have been. I count myself, I always think of myself as a pretty clever person, and pretty intelligent. I've got a great active mind, still want to know all the information about everything. And I went backwards at school, and mostly because of the religious aspect. And I was a dyslexic kid as well. So I had a lot of learning difficulties, and, you know, I mean, I couldn't coordinate properly left and right. I still can't. I mean, I can't play the drums. I play keyboards, but, you know, I have to do the left hand after I've done the right hand. You know, thank God for computers. But all of these uncoordinated restrictions meant that I had problems when it came to exams. I'd always flunk exams. I was in for the 11 plus, and my English teacher in primary school, my first school, was so proud of me, and she thought I was going to walk it because I could cite Shakespeare, Dickens. You know, I understood lots of things, Greek myths, you know, you name it, I was on top of it. But when it came to the exam, it just inky splurges on a piece of paper, you know, a mess, lots of crying, tears on the paper, you know, wanting to have a wee. It was just fucking awful. You know, I really kind of lost it. So I ended up in the sort of, when I went to, you know, my second school, I didn't go to the grammar school. I went to the secondary modern school.
Yeah, sure.
I went to a Catholic secondary modern school, far away from Shoreham-by-Sea, along the coast, past Worthing, past Littlehampton, to a place called, well, on the way to Littlehampton, called Goring. And Goring-on-Sea was kind of, real backwater. And there was this Catholic school there, which was, I've got to say, probably one of the most violent schools I could ever remember, you know, or ever seen in a movie or anything like that. I mean, one of the teachers killed one of the kids killed one of the teachers. It was that kind of thing. And these were Catholics. So I thought, well, it kind of dawned on me that maybe the religious stuff is not really as peaceful as you think it is. So, you know, the love of God and everything like that can also cause anger. So I went steadily down, 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 down. Everything I'd learned and all the stuff, there was a lot of stuff inherently that I knew and I was clever with. But when it came to being tested, I would always be intimidated. Or in fact, there was a boy there called Hollywood who used to beat me up every day, which I always think is an ironic point, because basically later on when I went to Hollywood, I felt like I was getting beaten up again. But the place, you know, but I, you know, I mean, it just didn't work out well. The only thing I was good at was art. So the art teacher, Paul Joy, was brilliant. He allowed me to express myself. And I painted massive murals all over the art school walls, albeit in a water paint that could be washed off. But to the horror of the senior teachers, you know, why are you letting him do that? And Paul Joy was this marvelous man, and he encouraged me. So actually, when it came to the exams, you know, the A levels and the O levels, as they used to be in those days, when you're about 15 or so, or 16, coming to that time of doing them, I was good at art and I was good at literature, but I failed my English language and I failed my English literature O level, but I gained the art. And then when I went to art school afterwards, moving on, I got my A level. So I did do well in art. But when I left school, feeling very undereducated, I went to Worthing Art School. My parents took me for their interview, and I said, you know, they said, well, the course director said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a painter. You know, I want to paint paintings. I want to draw and paint paintings and create art. And my father said, no, he doesn't. He wants to be a commercial artist because he's got to make a living. So immediately they took me left field to go and see another tutor. And this was the graphic design tutor. And they took me in there. So that's where I went into, even though I wanted to be a fine artist, you know.
I wanted to talk about your time at art college, because you mentioned you studied commercial art and graphic design at Worthing, but had it been your ambition to have a career as a visual artist or designer?
Yeah, a painter. No, not a designer or painter. I really just wanted to be, I wanted to be free to create art, you know, as a pure artist.
I wanted to ask you as well, sorry, what was art school like during that period you studied?
Bloody awful. Bloody awful.
What did it
was very restrictive. It was very restrictive, but what I did was I would quite cheerfully bunk off and go with the fine artist and do life drawing and study printmaking and I'd do all those things. And of course, nobody really checked up on whether you were in class or out of class. So it got to about a year of the course and I started flunking what I was supposed to be doing. I mean, I was learning lots, I was making incredible creations, but I wasn't doing very good boat show posters and adverts. And although I learned typography very quickly and illustration and packaging and things like that, I learned them. I got on top of them really quickly, but I didn't turn in some, very fundamentally good examples of art. And you were judged on the pieces that you turned in. So my productivity was zero almost, And it came to a point, not the first time in my life, but I walked before I was tested. I literally just hung it up and just said, I'm leaving. And my parents were very disappointed, but the course failed me anyway that year. It was supposed to be a 2-year course, you see, and I did 1 year and got out. And here's the remarkable thing. I went straight out and there was a design studio in Brighton that was advertising for young artists. And I went there with my portfolio, mostly fine art, illustrations of NASA spacemen and Muhammad Ali and drawings. They said, wow, these are incredible. You got the job. So I got a job straight away, and I could go back to my chums in my class at art school and say, hey, I'm working. You know, what are you doing? And they said, well, we're ready for another year of this shit. You know, so for me, it was, I'd escaped and I'd gone over the other side and I'd succeeded. So they were all very jealous of me. All of a sudden, I was at the top of the tree, and that was marvelous. That was an incredible experience to be in a studio. Okay, I was doing, very commercial work, but I was recognized for my skills, and that was fantastic. You know, that I was recognized for having talent rather than just being, just send it over there to Jerry, as my real name is. It's just send it over there to Jerry, he'll fix it. No, it was like, oh, let Jerry have a go at that because he could make it great. You know, so that I felt special.
I wanted to come on to music, and so far you briefly touched a little bit about music and obviously your family origins and music and creativity being part of your kind of family background. But when did you start listening to music, and what music interested you from an early age? What kind of made you decide to start writing and eventually composing your own material?
Well, it was fate, really, because I went off now on a route, at 17 or so, of going through the motions of going from studio to studio, being a graphic designer. I mean, as a graphic design career, it was incredible because I went on to London and worked in, big advertising agencies like J. Walter Thompson. I even wrote copy there. I ended up doing record covers for people like Bob Marley and all the Club Ska records, Humble Pie and all these things. So I was a success in that way. But parallel to that, there was my interest in music, as you say. And it was like two lives, working together. When I was very young, a parish priest, this is going right back, taught me how to develop my voice. He was an amazing, he had a beautiful voice, an Irishman, Father Dermot McHale. And I must have been about 6 or 7 years old. And he took me under his wing and said, can you sing? And I started singing. And he said, right, okay, I'll teach you. And he taught me how to bring the voice from the diaphragm. So as a young boy, a soprano, I had immediately one of these incredibly loud, solo choir voices. Mm. I could do that, for a winds of a dove. I had this, my voice was sparkling and it would bounce. When he took me to a cathedral one day and I was singing solo in there, I could hear my voice bouncing around the room, and they said, God, that kid's loud. So I already had that skill of producing a loud sound box, from this little frame. I was a tiny kid, I weighed about 6.5 stone or so, and, bang, there was this huge voice. So that stayed with me, that ability. And like at school, where things weren't really great, nevertheless, at my, I think, 5th year speech day, I was in a band singing Buddy Holly songs, and the whole school cheered. That's something I could do. So music was always there. I had the ability to sing. And then when I went into art school, I started picking up, I don't know why, I think it was because we were rolling along on the train to go to art school, as well as going on the train. I think it was 6 stations to get to the school in Goring and 4 stations to get to Worthing. And in that time, I would try and take, get an individual carriage, and I'd play my harmonica. The harmonica was my new thing. So I would play along with the rhythm of the rails, and play blues. And I had an older cousin who basically, really was into music, David Day. And this was up in Leicester. He was on my dad's side, my dad's sister's son. So I would go up to see David, as we all went up to see them. And David would play, listen to this. And he'd get out the new Buddy Holly record, Buddy Holly and the Crickets. And I go, what's that? And he'd play this music and I'd go, wow. And then he'd play me another record. He'd pull out, this is the first record by an American guy called Bob Dylan. And he'd put it on, and wow, that guy's playing a harmonica as well. Wow. And then he'd say, this is an old blues record. And he turned me on to so many things, you know, that I could listen to, and that opened up a whole new world. And then when I was out of arts, just at the end of my art school time, and having a few old school friends, my old school friends were also into music. Now they discovered Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and people like that. And
Chuck's probably my all-time favorite, my hero in music.
Jimmy Reed and you know, a lot of these kind of incredible stuff. And we would, and they had more money than we did. So Rob Funnell and his brother would buy the records, and we'd go up to Rob's house and they put it on the Dansette record player, and we'd listen to this Howlin' Wolf and all this stuff. Oh man, it was like another world. And yeah, he was playing harmonica, and Sonny Boy Williamson at this time, the same time as well. You know, so I linked with, I went sort of kind of automatically, or what's the word? I went naturally towards the harmonica because it was this cool little instrument you could put in your pocket. And I bought one day just to see what it would do, found one at the record shop, you know, and then started messing with it and found you could bend notes and you could chug along, you know, and get a rhythm. So this thing became my passion. So I would try and going back to the train, I would get into the train and try and find those carriages that didn't have a corridor so nobody could disturb me, and open the windows and play along to the, you know, the sound of the going over the points, over the rail, you know, and I would play along to that. And that's, you know, basically how I taught myself. And then one day at art school, a guy turned up out of the blue. I'd seen this guy. It was very interesting. He had big curly hair. I didn't have that at the time. And he wore, you know, very chic caftans, you know, in a real 1967. It was 1967, 1968. It was that time. And so I saw him one day on the beach, and he pulled out a harmonica and he started playing. And I went up to him and I said, you know, I've been trying to play this. And he said, oh, show me. And so I'm getting out, and he says, no, you do it like this. And he taught me how to bend notes. And after about 3, you know, get-togethers with him down on Worthing Beach, I came out with a whole new skill. And then suddenly he left the art school because he was older than me, and in the court he went on. I never saw him again, but he gave me those skills. So the parish priest, the harmonica player, mystery harmonica player, I never even knew his name really. You know, these were the people, my cousin, these were the people who imbued music into me, and possibly grandfather as well in Ireland with the fiddle and the harmonica there, you know, although there was a totally different style. So, you know, music was around. I was picking up on this stuff. I think the rest of the family didn't really notice it, but I was picking up on all this stuff, you know, and really getting into it. So I had this other life going on. And when I was in London, eventually, I went to blues clubs, folk clubs. There was Les Cousins in Greek Street, and the Troubadour in Earl's Court. And I would hang around with people like Bert Jansch and John Renbourn and Donovan and Ralph McTell and you know, Davy Graham, and I would get up sometimes and play with them. You know, I'd jam. I played with Donovan, I played with Bert, and you know, and one night I got up with John Martin at Les Cousins, and he actually sort of said to me, well, why didn't you do a solo spot? Because he heard me playing in the dressing room or something, or backstage or somewhere. And so I went on, grabbed hold of the microphone and played this thing as loud as possible. It was a Come All Ye, one of these all-nighters, you know. So this is 4 o'clock in the morning. All the hippies are trying to go to sleep, you know, they've had too much cider by that time. So I kind of wake up, what the fuck, you know, this guy, the noise coming out of me was just too much, you know, but I brought the house down, you know, wow. And in that same club later on, I would go there again every sort of Saturday night. And one night, Muddy Waters came down. I played with Muddy Waters. Another night, Paul Simon. I played with Paul Simon. The other said, wow. Oh, this is Ferry, our harmonica player. And I was graphic designer. I wasn't interested in going professional or doing anything like that, or making a career of music or taking it any further. I ended up sitting in with Rolling Stones and, you know, over at Eel Pie Island and places like that, and Richmond Town Hall or wherever they were, or a pub over there, you know. It wasn't Town Hall, it was a pub. But, you know, I'd get up with Bill Wyman and people like that, and they'd encourage me. And I played with Zoot Money, and I played with you know, quite a few, Ainsley Dunbar Band and a few of those people. And I can't remember when it was, but at some time I was up in Hampstead, and I was running a studio there. And I was also playing harmonica, blues harmonica with various people. And there was a group there called Black Cat Bones, and a chap called Paul Kossoff, who was a guitarist in the band. And I used to play with them. And one day they phoned me and they said, you know, sorry, because they were thinking of going professional. They're thinking of going out as a band, but they wanted to know if I wanted to try singing with the new band, because they had a new drummer and all that sort of stuff, you know. And I said, well, I'd like to, but they said, no, sorry, look, mate, there's going to be no chance, because we've got a new guy who's just come down from Newcastle called Paul Rogers. We're going to call ourselves Free, and we're going professional. You've missed your chance, I'm afraid, but let's stay in touch, you know. So, and about a week or two later, I had a nervous breakdown. I was in this studio full of artists. I'd found the space for all of us to work. We were all individuals. We were all, you know, either illustrators or layout artists or printers or colorists. You know, we all had various skills. And I was doing ads. I was doing a lot of illustration, those ads for like Nova magazine and Harper's and Queen and the Daily Telegraph and things like that. I do little cooking illustrations and things like that. But I literally had a major problem. Mentally, I couldn't cope, because I couldn't afford to pay for the studio any longer. And I couldn't tell the guys that I was out of money, and I couldn't pay the rent any longer. And I don't know, I just flipped. I freaked out and basically had a breakdown and didn't come into work. And one day, I think it was the weekend, I came in and I wrote a note and I put the keys on one of the desks, and I said, you're on your own, sort it out. This is the landlord's address and phone number. Phone him or go and see him and explain that, you know, Jerry Sayre is no longer the name on the lease. You know, I've left, and that's it. And I've always felt guilty, but I sort of moonlighted out of that, you know, and never went back there. And I ended up on a houseboat back in my hometown in Shoreham, where this lovely couple, Frank and Mo, who I used to know very well down there in the days past, you know. So I end up in there, and this is about 1969, the end of 1969, 70. And I'm living on Frank and Mo's houseboat. And I'm wondering what I'm going to do with my life. I actually get a job working in a car importers, which was at Shoreham Harbour. Because Shoreham, you know, Shoreham had a river and a harbour and an airport. It had so much going for it. I didn't see my parents. I stayed away from them for about a year because I was so ashamed at, you know, being I considered to be a failure to them. Couldn't even hold on to a job in art, you know. So I went to the work in the factory, really enjoyed it, just stacking parts, you know, the mindless kind of job, but it was perfect to clear the brain, you know, to clear my head. So yeah, I did that, and gradually found there was a folk club running in the pub next door to the houseboat. So I started the Lady Jane, right on the River Ada. So I started running the folk club, you know, and we had we would book people down from London, some of the people I'd played with before. So there I was again, you know, and a bunch of old friends now had electric guitars and amps and everything, and they were in bands. So I think I gravitated from that to singing in the bands. And as soon as I always with this loud voice, you know, as soon as I got to the microphone, I would get the gig because I was always louder than anybody else. And I knew a few blues tunes. So, you know, it was the time of the blues, John Mayall, maybe Cream starting up, you know, Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, you know, the Savoy Brown Blues Band, all this sort of stuff. The blues boom, lots of people with long hair and duffel coats, you know, and yeah, it's perfect. I just fell into it. We started a couple of bands. We went from Jester to Fido, spelt P-H-Y-D-E-A-U-X. We were a kind of art band. We had a band called Wurlitzer. There was always a sense of humor about these things. We had a band called Wurlitzer, and every single song used to start with the words Wurlitzer. Wurlitzer, cold black night, you know, or Wurlitzer, one for the money. So that was the rule. All of those silly bands aside, because we were all You know, the couple of the guys in the bands were ex-art school like me. So, you know, born stupidly creative, you know, too much brain, too little time. So the imagination running wild. So we eventually started a band called Patches. And Patches, we started writing songs because there was a guitarist called Max Chetwynd who came from Worthing, who came and lived on the houseboat as well. When I said there's an extra bunk, you know, you can stay here. And so he and I started writing songs for Patches, and we went to a couple of auditions. The first one was the Melody Maker Battle of the Bands, which went into areas, you know, West Country, South, Southeast, you know, North, Midlands, London, you know. Well, we practically won the Southern heat, you know, which was everywhere from, say, Portsmouth to Dover, you know, so all of that side. And but it was very disorganized. And while we were waiting for the results, because they couldn't make their mind up, they were doing all the other heats afterwards, so it got really tiresome. I saw an advert in a paper, local paper, the Evening Argus, Brighton's paper, that said, look, looking for bands, singers, you know, talent, looking to start up an agency, you know, anybody want to feel they've got some talent, you know, come down to the Pavilion Theatre, just by the Dome Theatre, the Royal Pavilion in Brighton, at a certain time, a certain day, a certain time. And we went down there with the band, dragged all of our equipment down there. One of the last people we were on the audition, but we won the audition. And the song that Max and I had written called Gypsy Dancer was, you know, we sang that, and the guy said, right, enough, you've won. I want you. And that was it. And this guy was David Cohen, later changed his name to David Courtney. And that was it. And the rest goes from there, you know. This
leads nicely to my next question, but you've given us such an interesting insight into all the influences from Buddy Holly, the 50s rock and rollers, Chuck Berry was mentioned, the blues side as well. And we lead on nicely to your relationship with British singer and songwriter David Courtney, you just mentioned. Yeah. You've kind of already briefly kind of given an introduction, but how were you introduced? And I also wanted to ask about how you also came into contact with singer Adam Faith, who was a huge star, eventually becoming your manager when you signed to two major labels here in the UK and also in the USA as well.
Well, at that audition at the Pavilion Theatre in Brighton, I believe, so I'm told later, that Adam Faith was somewhere up in the balcony watching. So the link of him and David Courtney, we'll call him David Courtney now because Cohen has gone. His father, Alec Cohen, wanted him to get a decent job. So he said, since I can't talk you out of being in music, because this is what people did at that time. It was not a decent profession to be in. You know, it was like, go and get a real job, you know. So all of us musicians, we were sort of not favored by our parents, as you know, as can't he get a decent job? Can't he learn a trade? You know, so it was all like that. That was the atmosphere in England. And David had played drums with Adam in Adam's band, Adam's backing band, many years later. I found this out later, of course. So David Courtney took me under his wing and said, right, let's try and write some songs, because that's what he really wanted to do. He didn't want to be an agency manager or anything. He did kind of manage the band, but I mean, he wasn't really getting us any gigs. We got them by ourselves because we'd actually be getting them from the other side, from the Worthing side of Sussex, you know, West Sussex. And he was an East Sussex lad. I don't think he ever got us a single gig, but he and I sat down. He played piano. He lived in a little flat just by the clock tower in Brighton, tiny little flat. And he had a piano in the front room. So he would bang away on the piano. And I would get these books out of lyrics or poems that I'd written as a kid in my, you know, creative frustration. I'd written down everything I could think of, you know, even about, you know, being in London, when I was hanging around with the folkies, being run over by a taxi cab. That's one-man band, you know, and imagining being in this terrible gig where everybody throws rotten tomatoes at you, which is the show must go on. So I would take these little stories and while he was playing, I'd go, oh, I got something for that, you know. And sometimes I'd show him a lyric and he'd say, oh, I've got something for that. And, you know, rather we sort of married our ideas and our influences. See, David kind of didn't come from the same side of music as I did, which was folk, blues, real natural kind of, you know, earthy kind of stuff. Dave came more from the Beach Boys, the Beatles, more schooled kind of music, you might call it. So he was more skilled in that kind of way and more traditional, a real pop guy. And I was a blues guy, you know. I'd rather listen to Captain Beefheart than the Beatles, you know. So David would love the Beach Boys and, you know, later the Eagles and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, his influences were straighter than mine. But here's the marriage was very interesting, because I would put my sometimes very kind of mystical or you know, maybe depressing even lyrics, you know, visually influenced lyrics to his very down-to-earth music, you know, with structured chords and all of that stuff. And the marriage was very interesting, you know, because David had also a unique style. He didn't play the chords that everybody else played. And that's what was interesting. So harmonically, David was in an interesting place, rather like Brian Wilson and Paul McCartney were in a unique place where they're, you know, you couldn't ever say that Paul's songs or John's songs or Brian Wilson's songs were like every other artist around, you know, every other pop singer around. They had their own stamp. And David, in a similar way, had his own stamp to his music. So I think we started coming up with something that was pretty unique, pretty different. I didn't think it sounded like anything. I was putting all of my influences from Bob Dylan to Paul Simon to Leonard Cohen to the blues in, but coming out was something very interesting, a marriage between David and I, an original style, you know, and a very original songs.
Talking about uniqueness, this kind of fits nicely to my next question, because a big breakthrough was your second single, which was a music hall styled song, The Show Must Go On, which was a massive hit in the UK. It reached #2. What was the kind of inspiration for writing and recording that particular song? And where did this kind of idea come from to dress up in the like pyro costume and makeup? Yeah, and perform?
Well, it sort of, it all came from the sort of the art school side of me, as it were, you know, because when I was at art school, I joined the Sussex University Film Club, and I would go over there, and they had over in Lewes, they had this, or near to I think it was, I can't remember the area, Poynings, I think, near Lewes, on the way from between Brighton and Lewes. But the university campus, they had a film club which was pretty unique, and everybody raved about it. So us guys at Worthing Art School, we knew about it. So we all tried to get memberships over there. And I remember seeing a movie called Les Enfants du Paradis.
Oh, that's a beautiful film, the Marcel Carné film.
That's where it came from.
It's a lovely,
so I saw
tremendous film.
Yeah, you know, and do you remember the actor, Jean-Louis Barrault, who played the Pierrot? So that's where it came from. I saw him and I thought, wow, that's incredible, you know, and I saw something of myself in him. Anyway, store that up, because this is years later, you know, I'm making the record with David, and Adam is now producing. So, you know, we've moved on into this area. We're up at the Manor Studios and we do the first recording. Here in this situation, Patches aren't cutting it. So basically Adam fired Patches and took on studio musicians. So we finished the record with them, although Max Chetwynd, the guitarist who I've written Gypsy Dancer with, hung on because he was a good guitarist. And he's on the Silverbird album as well. This is the first album. Halfway through the album, recording up at Richard Branson's The Manor in Oxfordshire, Adam threw a hissy fit and just said, I can't do anymore, can't afford it. We got to stop this. And you know, all his confidence one day fell apart. So me and Dave are looking at each other going, what are we going to do now? Well, we had an appointment to do a gig that weekend, or a little show in a pub in Brighton. And Adam had invited a guy down called Keith Altham. And Keith Altham's a music writer, music critic with New Musical Express. Also became a great publicist later on for the Beatles, the Stones, Jimi Hendrix. It was him that persuaded Jimi Hendrix to set light to his guitar at Monterey. So, you know, this guy was pretty much the man. He looked after the Animals, the Trogs, oh, you name it, the Kinks, everybody. So he came down to see us, and he was very impressed. He was going to write an article in the New Musical Express about me, although really I had no hits or anything at the time. It was just, you know, just starting off. But he was going to say, I think I've seen the future kind of article, you know, about me, which was very flattering. Don't know how I could live up to it. But while we were there, he mentioned that, look, I'm looking after Roger Daltrey at the moment, and he's just built a studio, and he's got nobody. He needs a guinea pig, somebody to go in there and try it out. And Adam said, well, I can't afford to carry on with Leo's album. If he can do it for free, if he can give us the studio free, oh, he will. Then we can go ahead. So basically, yeah, we had enough money to say pay the musicians and pay to travel up there, but we couldn't afford the studio because Adam had sort of, this time he was just pulling back the rug, you know, and saying, oh, I can't pay anymore. Of course, he did later finance everything. Of course, he came around. And one of the songs we wrote while we were up there was The Show Must Go On. And it was a song that Dave and I had sketched out before, but never got round to putting down. And we put it down fresh in the studio. And I think Russ Ballard found a banjo in the local pub, the Kicking Donkey. And just for a laugh, you know, we routine the song in the morning. And in the afternoon, when we were going to record it, he said, try this. And he told it, and it was, oh my God, it's perfect. Because, you know, the song is basically a kind of music hall music setting. And it's a song about, yeah, this worst gig that you can ever do. And all the wild men, big cigars, they're all laughing at me now, you know, and all you want to do is give up show business, get out, you know. It's like that, if you excuse me being rude, it's a little, and you can bleep this if you like, it's like that old joke, you know, sort of, oh, fuck show business. And you know, the guy walks out, you know. It was really an anti-show business, you know, anti this life song. It was a plea, you know, please make it stop, make the music stop, you know. So
probably very true in many ways as well.
Exactly. And yeah. So many people registered with that, you know, and that's why when it came out, I think it was such a success. But moving on from there, we started playing a tour after we'd done all this. And of course, we'll go into the Roger Daltrey story in a minute. I'll let you cue that up.
Yeah, I was going to, Roger was going to come into the frame shortly.
Yeah, but let me tell you first how the Piro came around, because we went to do the record cover, and it was Roger Daltrey's cousin who was going to take the photo. So basically, I'm standing in front of this guy, wonderful photographer, and he'd just done a session, and it was for Vogue, a photo session, and he had little Nell from the Rocky Horror Show on one side with these supermodels all dressed up, wonderful, you know, clothes and everything, and the other side he had a Piro, the white-faced clown, the very same guy as Jean-Louis Barrault portrayed in Marcel Cahn's Les Enfants de Paradis. So he looked at me and he said, how do you see yourself? And my hand just went automatically up to the edge of the photograph where the Piro, and like that. So he said, okay, well, this is great. He said, because Julian, you know, he wasn't going to ask why. He just said, well, this guy, Julian, the clown, he's a Belgian guy, he's a street clown, street performer. He's here tomorrow. So why don't we put on his suit? I've got a great makeup girl, and let's take some photos of you. And I went, okay. I didn't know what I got myself into, but I thought, why not? You know, so that's how we did the makeup the next day and the whole thing, and they wouldn't let me look in the mirror while they were putting it all on. And I'm putting on this guy's suit. He's 6 foot tall, by the way, and I was scrunching it up to try and get into it. But I looked the moment I looked in the mirror, I just knew that is it, because I was nervous, I was shy. Here was a career right in front of me. I had this dynamic guy, Adam Faith, who was a pop singer himself, saying, you're going to be a millionaire, son. You're going to be the biggest thing ever. And I'm going, how the hell am I going to, you know, how am I going to emulate this? And there he is, there. You can see him in the background. how am I going to, how could this guy, emulate this, how could this guy get away with it? Because I was shy. But if I did dress like this, I could hide behind it all. Nobody would know who I am. And I might get the guts and courage to stand up there and do it. And that's what happened. And it helped that transition from being Jerry Sayer to Leo Sayer was all formed by that. And of course, I did a tour with Roxy Music. After a couple of gigs, decided to put the makeup on. Kirsty Climo, the makeup artist, came up to the show. My ex-wife Janice ran up a suit in a week, and I put it on and I put the makeup on. I walked out on stage, and boy, they were still cheering for me when Roxy went on. So we knew it was working. And the song started to rocket up the charts. The show must go on. That's how it came about.
And it was a huge hit, of course, reaching number 2, as I mentioned.
But this is not quite in chronological order, but because before all this, Roger Daltrey had rather taken to me in the studio and thought I was pretty good and became a friend even, and one day just turned around to Adam and said, do you think they got any more songs? And we overheard this and said, yeah, we have. And he said, well, could you write some for me? And we said, well, yeah, okay. Next day we came in with, because David and I were getting really prolific. David Courtney and I were really prolific by this time. So we'd written a load of songs, and we gave them to him. And out of that, he picked One Man Band and Giving It All Away. And Adam straight away said, look, let's hold up Leo's album and put Roger's out first, because then the world will talk about this songwriter, which was a good strategy. And Roger
very clever
really,
strategy, yeah.
Yeah, and Roger was into it because, when he went out and Giving It All Away was a mild hit in America, and it charted certainly, and his album charted, produced by Adam and David, the same team, with me writing the songs with David. When that album, started to get some attention, he would go on to radio and newspaper and magazine, Rolling Stone articles, talk, yeah, you wait till you hear that Leo Sayer guy. This guy who wrote the songs, he's going to be huge, So he was my PR man. Wasn't that fantastic? So, I had Roger running around the world telling everybody, preempting my career.
It must have been an incredible endorsement to have the front man of The Who and such a big name, a huge name in the music industry. But
well, look, knowing him was daunting at first, but I mean, as you got to know him, he's a beautiful cat, really down to earth, and he literally took me under his wing. I mean, I remember doing a couple of live gigs, and he said, look, Mitch Mitchell lives up the road, Jimi Hendrix's drummer. He said, he's got Jimmy's old PA. He said, yours is shit. So he said, let me take out the Range Rover, because he had this new Range Rover. Wow, this amazing car, and 4-wheel drive, woohoo, never seen anything like that before. And he went over to Mitch's place. Hi, Mitch. Mitch, oh yeah, this is Leo. Hi, Mitch. Leo. No. And he said, just going to borrow the PA. He said, yeah, fine. Dragged all of the speakers and all of the amps and all the microphones and all that, and went down to my little gig in Stenning or Horsham or somewhere like that. And he was roadieing me. He was putting it all up. The band are all in shock. How come you got Roger Daltrey as your roadie? And he's putting, and all the audience are going, that's Roger, isn't it? And he said, yeah, I'm Roger Daltrey. Now get out of the way. I've got to mix this show. So he would be on the mixer, and he's my roadie, So he was an incredible guy. He just really believed in me. And
I wanted to ask you as well, when you first heard his songs recorded, your songs, of course, what was your initial reaction to his interpretation of your songs that you'd written?
Oh, mate, that was the most special day in my life.
I bet.
David Courtney and I, we heard that they were going to play one of the songs on Radio 1. It's a new record, and there's a show, I can't remember whose show it was. It might be Tony Blackburn or someone who would always play the new releases, So it was about a 3 or 4 hour show. So, and it was first thing in the morning. I remember Dave coming round in his Lotus Europa, and we sat down in this car, really low down on the ground, and drove. We wanted to hear it on the radio. It's the only way, isn't it? You got it. And in the car would have been very special. So the program goes on and goes. About 2.5 hours later, with a car full of crisp packets, and every now and then one of us would stop at a garage. I'll run into the loo, but you shout if it comes on, because not everybody had radios in those days. So, it was like the one in his car, an extra fitting, with the speakers was very special. So eventually the song comes on, and I've got to tell you, the moment it came on, maybe it was all the anticipation, maybe it was the waiting, maybe it was the lead up to it, the hype, whatever. But it was the most special moment to hear that Roger singing the song that I'd written the lyrics of and David had written the music of. We were just going, yeah, it was so exciting. And I don't think there's been many moments in my life that have been more exciting than that.
We're going to kind of summarize a bit now and talk about the 1970s. And I think it's probably fair to say that in your 50-year career, the 1970s was kind of your purple patch, where you just had succession of hit after hit in the UK and the USA. And we could go on forever. Show Must Go On, Long Tall Glasses, Moonlighting, You Make Me Feel Like Dancing, Thunder in My Heart.
Long Tall Glasses, one man band.
When I Need You, we could, and the success of the albums as well, Silverbird, Just a Boy, Endless Flight, and Thunder in My Heart. How do you look back at the success and musical output in the 1970s? And do you feel it was the most productive period in your career to date?
I think it was a time when what I was doing, first off with David, and then with other writers, with Tom Snow and later Albert Hammond and Alan Tarney, whoever I was working with, because I was mostly co-writing in those days. I think it was just like what I was doing married with the time. It's a little bit like San Francisco in the 67, when the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane, all those bands, they were the right band for the Doors. They were all the right band for the right time. They could chronicle what was going on in youth at that time. And I think that's why we were at. I mean, I was writing songs that were, for a start, urban romances, if you like. So, songs from Moonlighting to One Man Band to Orchard Road to Long Tall Glasses, they were all kind of had that kind of atmosphere to them. So that was like life was at the time, so the couple in Moonlighting, well, everybody knew somebody who'd lived that story, running away to Gretna Green to get married. Everybody had been kind of in a situation like Long Tall Glasses, where you couldn't have the money to buy a drink, but if you danced, you might kind of, all of those things. And One Man Band, everybody had been like nearly run over by a taxi cab and all of that sort of, and you recognize the places in the songs. Orchard Road, everybody had been through a failed romance and tried to glue it back together again. So my songs, in a way, up to 1976, were describing life. So I think that's why they became hits, because they were songs that the public understood. They were a little bit like, when you think of Waterloo Sunset and the Kinks, and that song, and for everybody where they were at with that song.
And quintessentially very British as well, those songs.
Exactly. So then becomes a shift. And I'm sorry I'm explaining this in a very complex way, but then comes a shift like in 1976, where Adam decides that now he's got to go to America and record. So we went off to America, and immediately, Richard Perry was the guy suggested to be the producer. I didn't really get on with him at first because he wasn't interested in my songwriting. He didn't like the British thing. He wanted to use the voice. The voice was what was magical to him. He'd seen me perform in LA. He'd seen me, he'd heard all the records. He saw a different route for me. He saw the R&B as well in what I was doing, the blues and the rock influence, the early rock influence. He saw all that, and he said, no, I'm going to concentrate on giving you the songs to sing rather than you have the burden of having to create them yourself. So you free yourself up and you become this objective voice. And in some ways he was right. He took me into a totally new area. And the other interesting thing was that he put me with musicians who were suddenly a class above anybody I'd ever worked with before. People like Jeff Porcaro and Michael Amardian and Larry Carlton and Lee Ritenour and, you know, Steve Gadd, all of these, Ray Parker Jr., these guys were really 18, you know. So I'm suddenly working with these guys and I'm finding that I've got all these vocal abilities that I can really sort of, you know, I can harmonize and I can do things. I mean, When I Need You, I'm singing all my own harmonies and I'm kind of finding a different way to sing that vocal as the different to the demo, you know, and putting my own stamp on it. I was interpreting songs that Richard would bring, you know, or suggest to me. And of course, in the middle of it all, I was jamming with this great band. So things like You Make Me Feel Like Dancing came out of that. They came out of jam sessions in between the process that Richard was putting me through. So they leaked in, you know, and Long Tall Glasses was recorded. Their initial recording was us jamming in the studio in between takes while the guys changed over the reels, you know, these reel-to-reel takes. Okay, got to put on another reel. Hang on, guys. This will be about 10 minutes, you know, I just got to line this thing up. And meanwhile, we're just jamming. And Richard, meanwhile, heard what we were doing with You Make Me Feel Like Dancing, with the bones of it, you know, and me scatting and the band playing this groove and went, put the tape back on now, record that, record over what we did before. This is...
Don't erase that tape.
Yeah, he just knew. He knew. His bones, his blood told him that this was the hit. And about a week later, he had me up in his office and he played me back a recording of what we'd done, which I'd forgotten about. And he said, that is your hit. He said, that can change the world. Because basically I'd come up with something rather like maybe Hall & Oates had done before, or, you know, or Boz Scaggs, where it was crossover music. It was like I was singing something that was almost black music by a white guy. And that, you know, he knew that that would be very special. So you gotta, you know, this crazy vocal and this groove, you know, you know, it was very different. It was kind of, it was the precursor of disco as well, because this was before Saturday Night Live, Saturday Night Fever. It was before that. It was before the Bee Gees really had, you know, tricked into that. So he said, you know, look, that's your single. That's your first single. We also recorded When I Need You as well on the same album, The Endless Flight, you know, the album. But You Make Me Feel Like Dancing was, it like rocketed up the charts. It just didn't stop. And was my first one.
Surrounding yourself with some of the musicians you've mentioned, session musicians who are accomplished, they've had years and years experience of working and playing with different artists, working with different styles of music. Do you think that makes you better as a musician as well? Because you're learning from them and you're coming up with new ideas, new ways of playing. Yeah. Do you think that was that kind of a musical education?
Totally. But also I wasn't daunted. You know, it's just a bit like the bit we were talking about with Roger Daltrey, where all of a sudden you got the most famous lead singer in the world and you're in his studio and he's saying, yeah, let's do this. And, you know, and why don't I give you a PA and I'll roadie you next week? You know, and I wasn't daunted by it. I felt like this was my place. Mm-hmm. So when I was in there with those American musicians, I was holding my own, you know. I mean, Larry Carlton, who when he was playing with me, great guitarist that he is, you know, said, look, why don't you come up to tonight with me? Because I'm playing a place in the Valley, a little club, and come and be the singer because love what you're doing. And he said, no, I've got a surprise for you. And he'd set me up because I'm like on stage with Larry and his band, who are fantastic. And I don't know, I'm singing some song, maybe something that was hip at the time or something like that. And all of a sudden behind the curtain walks out B.B. King, you know, and I'm going, you know, this is, you know, he said, now I want, and B.B. says, I heard you're a pretty good singer, young boy. He said, let's sing a song together, you know, and you know, you know, I've been singing Sweet Little Angel, the B.B. King song for years with crappy bands, you know, all the way through my youth. And all of a sudden it's, I got a sweet little angel, and this BB going, yes. it's one of those moments, you know. And so I was kind of, I didn't feel, as I say, daunted. I didn't feel out of my depth. I felt comfortable. I felt this was my place, you know. I snapped into it, and and he relished it. You know, I made 3 albums with Richard. Each one got kind of better and better as they went along. But the only problem was that we couldn't hold on to Richard because Richard's impatience for hits. And when my songs like Thunder in My Heart weren't instant hits, and Raining in My Heart and some of those things that we did, you know, Can't Stop Loving You, How Much Love, you know, when they weren't instant hits after You Make Me Feel Like Dancing and When I Need You had been number ones, 2 number ones in succession, he kind of lost interest. You know, he was only interested in big records. And years later, I interviewed him, you know, the same time as I kind of went back to see my friend Ben Fong Torres in San Francisco. I interviewed Richard for some a kind of interview that I added to a re-release of Thunder in My Heart, Thunder in My Heart. And he said, I don't really remember that one. I only remember the hits. And I went, oh my God, you know. But of course, we got our revenge because Thunder in My Heart again became a hit later.
Yeah, which we'll obviously talk about.
Yeah. But it was an interesting part of my life because going there and giving up my songwriting head for a while, you know, and creation head to do these projects with Richard, I learned so much stuff, man. I mean, you know, I came out the other side a completely different artist, much more skilled and accomplished and a million times more confident, you know.
The 1970s, we've already established, was such a prolific period in your musical career. And we've mentioned all the hit records, some of the seminal musicians you played with. How much has the music industry, how much has it changed when we moved into the next decade, the 1980s? And were you conscious about wanting to change your musical sound or your image? And how do you look back at your recording output in the 1980s? And are there any albums or songs in that particular decade you're particularly proud of?
Oh, many. But yeah, it's a good question because yes, we did have to adapt because punk came along, and you know, punk's mission was to trash everything that had been before, you know, to say it was crap. And you know, we were all caught up in that. We were all being forced to kind of think again. You know, pub bands came out. The people like Elvis Costello. It was all about upset the status quo.
Then you had the new wave thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
turn the tables over and change there. Then you know, I mean, we had glam rock in the 70s, and now we had the new romantics, were a kind of, you know, a glam rock again, but now with computer music. You know, so you know, it was basically based around sequences and things like that. You know, so a whole new thought coming along. You know, Gary Newman, Teardrop Explodes, all of these bands coming in. So you have to kind of, you can never, I think if you've got your ear to the ground and you've got a sense in being a creative person of what the zeitgeist is at this time, you know, how things are, you've got elements like Maggie Thatcher, you know, and you've got to rebel against her. So you need a voice to do it, and you need to join the voices that are at the front line. So I think things changed for me when Chris Wright, who was the head of Chrysalis Records, said, hey, I've got an idea for you. I found this guy called Alan Tarney, and he'd made a record with Cliff Richard called We Don't Talk Anymore. And it was a very different record because on this record, apart from the drummer, Trevor Spencer, Alan was the only musician and the only singer, apart from Cliff. He was and producer and writer. So he did the lot, you know, so you had this guy who's a one-man band, and I met with him and we went straight into the studio. I mean, we got on like a house on fire, and he played me a couple of songs once in a while, let me know that he'd written, and I started singing them. And he said, right, take off my voice, put yours on. And we just hit the ground running. The first session was 2 of his songs. And then the next day we came in and we started immediately writing songs. And I had some ideas, musical and, you know, and lyrical, and he had some ideas, musical and lyrical. And we somehow met in the end together, and we created an album, Living in a Fantasy, which, although it wasn't a smash hit at the time, one song, More Than I Can Say, which was a cover, broke out of that and gave me my return to the charts in America, because it went to #2. It was also a big hit in England as well. Went to #2 in England. So I felt that I was joined to the 80s, even though most of the people I'd be competing with would naturally be, what's the word? They would be new and fresh because they just started out. And you were starting to get this vibe in England, which I've always thought is a bit sad, that only young and new can cut it. Anybody who's been around for 10 years, well, fuck them. We'll just keep moving on. It's sad, but that's what they do. They eat their old and, bury them. So I had to compete with all of that. So people got immediately kind of, every time I'd have a new song out, it would be, they'd drag up an old picture of the curly hair and, or the clown or, something like this. They'd want to hold you back, So the 80s became tough, but I was still making good records. And we made Orchard Road in 1983, 82 or so. And then I made an album with Arif Mardin, which was pretty fine as well. And then 83, I made an album, Have You Ever Been in Love? And although, and that had Orchard Road and Have You Ever Been in Love added to a bunch of other songs I did. But then a weird thing is that record went platinum, even though I wasn't being talked about anymore, I was still having hits. So I wasn't served that badly by the 80s, but I wasn't joining in, if you know what I mean. And I wasn't being recognized. So I was slipping away a little bit, But of course, I was doing live gigs, traveling all over the world, doing here in Australia, South Africa, and America.
Still making music, most importantly.
Still making music, exactly. And that's what you've got to do. Because ultimately, I think all of us know that if you struck gold once, you're going to strike it again. And that's what you have to believe. If it's in your abilities to know how to do that, you will find a way to do that. And you will find a way to adjust what you know to the new age as well, and it took me a while to do that, but eventually we got there,
Now I'm gonna
only took 25 years, but but what's that,
I'm gonna jump forward very much in time now, and I'm gonna come on
you'll have to, because nothing happens between the 80s and
to the present.
Yes. Whew. You didn't even ask about Big Brother.
I deliberately avoided that, actually, to be honest.
Thank you.
I expect you've been asked a million times.
Oh, no, I'm writing my book at the minute, and I finally managed to encapsulate the story of that in my own words. And you can see the shit it was. I mean, it was a nightmare. And I only did it because, well, we're going to get, anyway, we'll leave that.
We won't mention Big Brother. I did watch the video. I did watch the video the other night on YouTube, and I did have a wry smile on my face. I thought it was great, to be honest. So you've previously covered songs written by John Lennon and Paul McCartney, and you've recently released the album Nothern Songs. What made you decide to make an album covering Beatles material, and what were the challenges involved in recording their material, and what's the reaction been like from your fans, music lovers, as well as the music press?
Well, the reaction has been mostly really good. I mean, from the critics, it's been, fairly good. There'll always be the Leo Sayer stigma. I saw a couple of magazine articles, and they just said, well, it's Leo Sayer, isn't it? So it can't be any good, and just move on, literally. I mean, so people don't listen anyway, do they? They just see something and then they make up their own mind. So you've always got that, but mostly the fans have been really receptive. Most of the positive critics have always said the same thing. Oh my God, he's taken the Beatles and made a Leo Sayer record out of it. And I think that's kind of nice, because I didn't try to be anybody different than myself. I just sort of wanted to interpret some of my favorite songs. And I think that interpretation is something that we all do, from the Rolling Stones covering Chuck Berry in their early days, and everybody saying, how dare they do that? And the Beatles, doing Twist and Shout and some of those, and Roll Over Beethoven again, or us, some of those songs that they did, Johnny Be Good, how dare they, So we've always been criticized whenever bands or artists pick songs from another time and bring them forward. You're always up for a hiding to nothing, as it were, you know.
Mm.
So I think that I felt good about doing the project, and I've always interpreted songs from the past. I mean, I did my own version of Raining in My Heart, Buddy Holly, my own version of More Than I Can Say. And before that, yeah, for a Christmas record, I'd done Let It Be. And I didn't do it completely exactly like, you know, the Beatles. But I remember Paul McCartney saying to me personally, he said, I love your version. You really did something with the vocal line. It's great, you know. So there you go. So you can feel that you're not out of the ballpark that much, you know. But it came to me, the idea of doing it, I think it was triggered because I was trying to learn how to use my studio by myself. I just didn't want to pick up the phone and you know, get a bass player and a guitar. With computers, we can do so much now. I mean, we can get strum along guitar parts. I can play keyboards. I can do the bass, the drums. And I've been making a lot of demos over the years for a lot of the more recent albums I've been doing. You know, I sometimes present them to the musicians as fully fleshed out demos. And a couple of the times, you know, engineers would say, why are you letting them? It's actually, I prefer what you're doing. Yeah, but I was kind of that, as, you know, insecure that I'd have to get musicians putting their real professional stamp on it. But this time I thought, no. And I thought, well, I won't choose my own music because I'd be too closely embedded to it. You know, I'd be protective of it, as it were. So this is about 10 years ago. I recorded, just as they come up on the album, exactly the same version, Eleanor Rigby with that kind of Michael Jackson beat to it. I recorded my version of Strawberry Fields Forever with the kind of Ry Cooder slide guitar in there. Norwegian Wood, run down to almost where it's a quiet jazz kind of groove, you know. And what was the other one? Girl, which was kind of emulating Prince in a way, you know, or Michael Jackson, you know. So oh girl, you know, and doing a completely different take on that, you know. So I took those 4 songs and I did those versions, and I had a wonderful engineer who came over from England just after I'd come over to Australia, called John Hudson, who used to be with Mayfair Studios, run Mayfair Studios. He was the engineer on all the Tina Turner records, and you know, many, you know, What's Love Got to Do with It, all those things. I'd worked with him before. He's incredibly experienced, and he kind of helped and mixed those songs for me here. And we started working together on the project. And so I would send him mixes. He would adjust little things, bring them back to me. Then I'd adjust little things. And we made the record, because of COVID times, you know, carrying it forward to the last couple of years where we were finishing off or digging into most of the after getting those 4 songs out of the way, you know, suddenly we were in it. And I thought, well, nothing better to do during COVID and my 50th anniversary coming up. Let's make a record of something that I love, and let's make it of the Beatles. And George Harrison's in there as well. It's not just Lennon and McCartney. So I always thought Harrison was a tremendous songwriter. Yeah, no, incredible.
Falls under the radar a little bit because of.
Well, some say the best Beatles solo artist, you know, after the, you know, because, and it's interesting actually. I mean, you know, to go off topic slightly, but when you look at Let It Be, the film, and you see the other guys rejecting Beware of Dark, well, not Beware of Darkness, but Isn't It a Pity, and some of these songs, you go, what were they thinking? You know, I mean, Jesus, why didn't they just let him do that? And they could have all made those into, I think the Beatles would have made those into even better records than George made on his own, you know, because their input was fantastic, the way they worked together. And it's sad that he was rejected. Anyway, that's another story. But anyway, I cracked into it, and the songs sort of suggested themselves. I just picked out favorite things and was fooling around in the studio with them and being, you know, very naughty sometimes, and taking them to places where some of the songs hadn't been before, you know, like Day in the Life and you know, Can't Buy Me Love really slowed down almost to a very sort of like jazzy kind of thing, you know. So Revolution, almost doing it like the Knack, you know, da 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 da, my Sharona, you know, say you've got a revolution, changing the beat completely, you know. But I was having fun doing it, and I think that was the essence. Nobody was going to tell me how to make the record. I've in fact stopped recently. I mean, I don't listen to anybody any longer. I just get on with it. And it was really nice. I mean, I had John's support because I'm playing the songs to John Hudson, and he's saying, that's great, it's great, it's great, it's great, you know. And then I had a DJ friend here, Glenn A. Baker, who's our Australian biggest, you know, he's the rockologist of Australia. And I played him a few, and he said, oh, you've got to release this, you know. So, and these are guys that know what they're talking about. So I thought, well, if they endorse it, then I think I'm okay. So I released it and thought, oh shit, wait for the flack. But it's been surprising that there hasn't been much flack. Everybody thinks it's pretty good. And it's strange, you know, because I work very much in isolation now. I don't even play them to my partner, Donatella, lives across the other side of the street there. She's over there just having cooked dinner for us, and I'm in the studio now. So I don't even play them to her until they're finished. And she'll turn around and go, interesting. You know, she's Italian and very dry. Steve Williams knows her. He'll tell you. So yeah, she's the worst critic. Oh, toughest critic in the world. I daren't play her anything. She said, "Why do you do that? That's stupid." You know. So I work very much in isolation, and I trust myself, and I think that I'm in tune with my fans because they seem to kind of like what I'm doing. So, you know, I that's the way I work. I reckon Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen and Paul Simon, they all work the same way as well. You know, we work to satisfy, you know, the voice in our heads. You know, that's what it is. And we listen to the voice in our head. We listen to the voice in our hearts, you know, and we follow that. And I think if you've been around for 50 years and you don't know what to do by now, then you might as well give up anyway.
Yeah, probably very, very true. Very wise words. 50th anniversary and a UK tour.
Yeah.
In August. We'll obviously mention that as well. But I wanted to kind of come on and ask you what made you decide to relocate to rural Australia in 2005. And you eventually became an Australian citizen. And how does life differ in Australia to the UK? And can you talk about your music profile and fan base in Australia?
Well, don't tell anybody, but it's fabulous down here.
I can imagine.
Yeah, no, it is great. I mean, space. See, I started coming down here. I came down here first in 1975, the first tour that I did. And that was just after the PRO. And, you know, and I guess Just a Boy was the record at that time, released in 1974. But, you know, really hitting it here in 1975. And I was greeted with Beatlemania. I think they'd been anticipating my arrival. All of the TV shows, the TV pop show here called Countdown, a guy called Molly Meldrum. I mean, I was just fated, you know, here, coming down here. And it was wonderful. It was really heartwarming, you know, because I'd maybe already become accepted in England, but here was this new audience. I'd just been to America as well, but I mean, America's different. It's kind of, everything's rather well organized, you know, and Australia is a bit chaotic. So it was kind of fun and charming down here, that first tour. I mean, it was gangbusters. I mean, everybody came, the gigs were crowded. We added shows after shows after shows, came out of here with this just, you know, incredible experience, thinking, I love this country. So I suppose that was the first time it got into my bloodstream, you know. I really I felt at home here, you know, really at home here. And then I came many, many more times. Sometimes when things weren't going so well in the UK, I could come down here and do a tour. And then I met a manager down here who said, look, Leo, if you move down here, you could make new records at a time when nothing was happening for me in the UK. I mean, 2002, 2003, I had a great band. I couldn't get any gigs. I mean, you know, we'd get a few one-offs in Germany and something in Monaco or something like that. And, well, something in South Africa, but it was getting tiresome. I mean, the new wave had kicked in England, and it was all, anybody over the age of 25 was, yeah, persona non grata, you know. So it was like the nostalgia thing hadn't quite clicked in, you know, where now, you know, look at it, like we see ABC and, you know, I don't know, all these bands, you know, from the 80s, the Mid-Euro and people like that, suddenly are really fated. Tears for Fears, you know, they're all really, you know, it's like, we love nostalgia. we love the Beatles and the Stones, and we'll kill to see them. And, you know, we love Ronnie Wood and we love Jeff Beck and all those people. And we admire them. You know, we want Kate Bush to come back and work again. And, you know, we want that. We want what we've listened to come back. You know, we'd like Mick Hucknall and Simply Red and Bono and U2 to be playing gigs in London every other day. You know, it's very interesting that all started up after I came here. So when I came here in 2005, I was giving myself a kick in the pants. I was challenging myself to kind of cut it with this music industry here. And fortunately, they all really respected me. And there were some great musicians I started working with down here. And we hit it off immediately. Some great singers and artists and bands as well, you know, and I toured with them. I did a lot of multi-artist tours here. Have done over the last few years, and I'm accepted as an Australian artist finally now, because at first, you know, I was the outsider, a bit of a foreigner, but you know, and I don't know, I find this place very inspiring because it's a little bit younger, maybe in its music industry, and a bit more like America, where they are not sort of so shy of showing their enthusiasm for it, you know, whereas in England, we'll sit on their hands, look cool, don't look at him. Don't let him know that you like him. Yeah, all right, yeah. You know what I mean? It's kind of a little bit like a boys' club, isn't it? It's, you know, we like Bob Geldof because he's in the press. But we don't like Jules Holland. No, you know, and it's a bit of a club, isn't it?
A lot of musical snobbery as well, I'd imagine.
There is, isn't there? There is. And, you know, and it's, if I like this kind of music, I don't like that kind of music. You know, it's a lot of that, you know, what we call rack jobbing in the record shop kind of terms, you know, or in radio, you know, one radio station won't play anything out of their kind of ear, you know.
When you look back in hindsight, do you think 2006 was kind of a pivotal year as well, with the release of
yes, very much,
Thunder in My Heart Again? Do you think that kind of raised your profile back again and kind of, I don't kind of like to use the word, but did you think you were kind of relevant again?
Well,
it fashionable all of a sudden.
It gave me a bit of revenge in a way, you know. So, and that was kind of nice because I'd always rated Thunder in My Heart as one of my best tunes anyway. And of course, when it wasn't a hit in 1977, it may well have been because it was ahead of its time, you know, like that album was, you know. And I mean, only a year or so later, records with that kind of style were everywhere, you know, sort of glamorous kind of, you know, R&B, disco-ish soul, glossy records, you know, but it may have been at the wrong time. But I mean, I felt that it was nice that finally Thunder in My Heart had its day in the sun. And of course, Meck, although it wasn't really Meck who mixed it, it was Bimbo Jones, another couple of guys who made the record. Meck was just the name on it, you know. But they did such a great job because it was the original vocal, you know, the original record. All the multi-tracks were destroyed. Adam Faith, my manager, put them all on a bloody fire and burnt them, all the English copies anyway. I mean, since then, I've had some copies. I've got Endless Flight in my studio at the moment, and I'm planning to release it on its 50th anniversary. It's 45 years at the moment. Or 46 years. And so in 4 years' time, I'll do a complete remix of it, which will be interesting. It will reveal some things, you know, that people didn't hear, and a couple of outtakes as well. So we'll do a redux album of that, you know, and that's what you can do with remixes. So it was really interesting. I mean, one of the most interesting things was flying over to London and miming to a vocal that I sang in 1977 on a TV show, which is bizarre, but let's not go there. You know, I mean, do you sing the same way? Yeah, nearly. Close. Yeah, in fact, actually, it's really funny because we did this Saturday morning TV show, and Blue were on the show, and all the kids were all over them, you know. And when I'd sung my song with my chic dancers and a bit of video in the background and looking pretty slick, they were all over me like a cheap suit. So it was like, you know, but when they actually finished the song, they left the mic open. So I carried on singing, I feel fun. And it was exactly the same. And everyone went, God, he can still do it, you know. So it was quite interesting.
One final question, Leo Sayer.
Revenge, you know.
Then we move on to the final questions that we
Yes.
ask all your tape guests.
Yes.
Just a quick fire questions to wrap up.
And you're still using tape.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, mate. It's good.
I wanted to ask you what the future holds for you, Leo Sayer, and how do you look back at such a long career in the music business, and what have been your most defining moments? And of all the areas you've experienced, live performance, songwriting, recording, a bit of television, TV thrown in the mix as well, which have you enjoyed the most and why?
Well, I think I've enjoyed all of it in a way. Look, I mean, there've been, you know, it's been well publicized, the business hurdles that I had to go through, rip-offs, and, you know, a manager who forged my signature and stole everything. So I had to kind of work to get everything back. And of course, Adam Faith, who put me there in the first place, who, you know, I love and admire for doing that, ripped me off at the same time. So, you know, what can you say? It's as if every silver lining has a cloud, you know, ready to move in front of it. It's a strange life in the music industry. You never quite know when the you know, where the peaks and where the troughs are going to appear. It's like that old graph, the joke on the back of the hospital bed, you know, which is like that. You know, one day he's good, the next day he's bad, next day he's good, next. So it's very much like that. And I think that when I look back, I see an overall picture. I've always seen songs as like chapters in a book, you know, so in a way they only work when they all fit together. And I tried very, very hard in my life in recording to never make the same album twice, to never make even the same song twice. So I kept moving, I kept changing styles. Some people criticized me for that. They thought I would have been easier to deal with if I'd have just sounded the same through every album. But I didn't want to do that, you know, because I'm a Gemini, Taurus Gemini. I'm like, you know, I'm a mess of different conflicts. And the dyslexia as well, I suppose, kind of, you know, gets me into multitasking and doing millions of things at the same time, or wanting to. So I like all of it. You know, it all seems to fit together. In other words, the lows create the highs, and the highs create the lows. You know, it all fits together. So I could say I regret nothing, and I don't really know, to be really honest, what are the peaks. You know, I think that there's a few moments during the interview that we talked about, like sitting in David Courtney's car, listening to Giving It All Away, sung by Roger Daltrey. Wow, that's a peak. And I suppose, you know, being told I was #1 in America with You Make Me Feel Like Dancing while I was in a clothing store, and somebody running in and saying, hey, that's the guy who's #1. And I didn't even know, you know, the charts had just broken out. The charts were big things in those days. So I'm carried down the street, Fifth Avenue, on somebody's shoulders with a whole gaggle of people going, that's him, Leo, Leo, and brought into the Plaza Hotel, you know, where you know, and immediately the manager next day moved me up to the suite. So it's, you know, there are moments like that, of course, which, you know, totally describe success. They are real peaks. But sometimes the real peaks are the moment that you think of a song, you know, and the moment that maybe you meet someone influential and important to you in the first place. And that could be very much a backstage or recording studio moment. So how do you describe it? You know, sorry to be obtuse, but it is really difficult to nail what are the great moments. The great moments could be me meeting Adam Faith, you know, me deciding to stay with Richard Perry rather than get the plane and get the hell out of there because I didn't like him, you know. So these are turning points, you know. The moment that Chris Wright said, why don't you try this guy Alan Tarney, you know, and the moment that I met Albert Hammond and we started writing songs together, you know, they're all moments that sometimes are not predictable. You can't design a career, you can't manage a career for these things. They just come along, you know. And every night, standing on stage with my band, I think that this moment right now is the greatest moment of my life, because I'm a guy who lives in the now. And that's what I love doing. I love standing on stage, communicating with an audience, being an entertainer. It's a great life, because all you're doing is rolling around the world making people happy. So, you know, in the actual carrying out of that, there's all the backroom stuff, of course, making the records, you know, organizing it, you know, making sure to get the right moves, making sure to make enough money to be able to do things and fly well and all this sort of stuff. But the moment you're on stage doing it, that's the moment you prove it. And that's the moment it all comes back. And that's this lovely trading moment where the audience are loving you and you're loving them. And you kind of cross these wonderful paths. And you have this moment when you sing this song, say, giving it all away. And at that moment, time stands still. And you're halfway through that song. I'm in 1971 when I wrote it. And also in 2022 at the same time. And time travel in the middle of those performances. It's a remarkable thing. And that's something that I'm gifted with, and that's something that I value. And so I could not predict where it goes from here. Who knows? Please God, it goes on for another 10 years. That would be great.
We come on to that ultimate moment. We ask all these guests the same question. You don't need to think about these in any detail.
No.
They're kind of quick fire questions just to find out things maybe we didn't know
Yellow
about
eggs.
you, Leo. Here we go. So number one, Leo Sayer, what would you say is your favorite pastime?
Pastime, taking photographs. I'm a photographer.
Move on to cinema. We've not touched on film at all.
No.
What would you say is your favorite film and why?
The Gold Rush by Charlie Chaplin. And it was the song that influenced Long Tall Glasses. But I always loved Chaplin. And I don't know, somehow I see myself in Chaplin as well sometimes.
Chaplin, I agree with you, was a cinema genius. The things he could
I once wanted to play him in a movie, but I found out Robert Downey Jr. had got there first. Damn.
And it was a good film as well. If you could have had a different profession, what would it have been?
Actor.
Who in life would you say has been your greatest inspiration?
Bob Dylan.
Do you read a newspaper, Leo Sayer? And if so,
No.
Which one?
I read a newspaper called Twitter, because you can choose your journalist in there and you don't have to be biased by all these bloody newspaper owners with all their biases, like Rupert Murdoch, who want to kind of like ruin the world. So no, I don't. I'm not very influenced. I mean, when I was in England, I was reading a newspaper called The Independent, which I thought was pretty good, but that's gone off now. And they're all pay to subscribe, which is, you know, I mean, how can you ask people to pay for the news, the truth? And I should add here that I'm a huge supporter of Julian Assange. So we better move on to the next question before I get into trouble.
Talking about food next, do you like cooking? Yes. And what would you say is your favorite food?
Well, look, I have an incredible partner, an Italian partner, Donatella Piccinetti. And after all these years we've been together, we may actually be getting married soon. We're thinking about it because, you know, what's the point in going on without that? But she makes the most incredible food, and everything comes from her mama, which came from her mama, from their mama, from, you know, it's passed down in generations. And she never looks at she never makes a recipe or looks at a cookbook. She just creates. And pasta in our house, particularly one pasta, which is penne pasta with a tomato sauce with garlic and various herbs in it and tuna, is just like, the way she does it is just out of this world.
This next one stumps a lot of our guests, but we ask, who is their favorite cultural icon? It could be maybe a political figure.
Julian Assange.
Of course, who you just mentioned. Yeah. Move on to
or who's the lovely girl? Oh God, her name has passed me by for the moment. The wonderful little girl who's activating the student.
Greta Thunberg.
Greta Thunberg, yeah. So you choose either of those. They're my heroes.
Leo Sayer, curse words next. What is your favorite curse word and why?
Well, fuck is pretty good. You know, it can be used in so many different. There's one with a C that describes people perfectly, but I don't like to overuse it. You know, but look, I mean, they were all Anglo-Saxon words, and we used to use them all the time. And my mother would be disgusted with me in heaven. But But I think fuck is a very good word, and it's very useful because it's like you can't say gosh. It just doesn't really mean anything, does it? So yeah, I'll use that one.
You're a man who's seen many parts of the world and traveled all over the place, obviously with your work, of course. But what would you say is your favorite place or holiday
Well, I mean, I live in
destination?
exile in Australia, so I suppose I should really say that. But actually, my favorite place of all is Italy. I find myself very at peace there. I love the culture. I love everything about it, the food, fast cars, clothes. And this lovely habit of taking a big lunch break, and then going back to work afterwards. Look, it's all great. The siesta is a wonderful thing. Yeah, Italy, I'd have to say.
This is a tricky one to ask you because you've mentioned so many influences in music, people you've covered over the years, artists you've worked with. But who would you say is your favorite music artist? And what is your favorite album?
I'd say Bob Dylan again. And I think the freewheeling Bob Dylan is just one of the greatest records ever made.
Next, what would you say is your greatest achievement to date?
Staying alive. Surviving. I think surviving this business is pretty tough. And I think that I'm a soupçon of relevance, now, and just that is good, and I like the fact that I can still, in a small way, compete in this industry. I'm not living in my past. I'm able to do something relevant now, so I'm proud of that.
And Leo Sayer, the final your take question: how do you wish to be remembered?
Ooh. I like that. You probably remember Spinal Tap.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And I love the keyboard player when he's in the bath with the hairnet on, and they ask him, they say, just what is the moral? How do you sum up your life? And he said, how do you like to be remembered? And he said, had a good time all the time. And I think I'm going to put that on my gravestone. It's so perfect, really. Had a good time all the time. And I'm a very positive person. Most people know me for my energy and my positivism and my optimism. And so I have had a good time all the time, and plan to, when I'm dead, I'll still be having a good time.
And why not? Leo Sayer.
In the afterlife.
Yeah, in the afterlife. Who knows what will happen? Yeah. I wanted to thank you kindly for being a guest. It's been
no problem.
A huge honor. I've spoken to a lot of people from the music industry, from musicians like yourself to songwriters and so on. And, for me, I was kind of honored that you agreed to firstly do this interview for us, a small kind of channel that's only been running for a year, but we aim for 60 minutes, but I think it's been nearly 2 hours, but it's just been an incredible insight with stories of how it all began, what you're doing now, your time in Australia, changes and ways of adapting it in life. And you've had a smile on your face throughout, and I kind of get the impression, you've obviously done so many interviews, but I got the impression that you were quite enjoying this evening. So
very
thank
much.
you kindly.
Nice talking to you, man. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much. And let me see if I can find you some more interesting people to interview as well amongst the people I know. So we might find some, not just in music as well, around the periphery of all the arts and all the entertainment and all the creative sciences, because I see you've got a big roster of people there, sports people as well,
Yeah, we try to.
I think they would like this.
Yeah,
I think that they would like this in-depth approach. It's really good, and quite honestly, between you and me, it doesn't matter how big or small you are, as long as it's interesting. That's what it's all about.
It's been very, very interesting indeed. And finally, when is the UK tours in August? Where will you be playing? And where can we find out more about? I'd say find out more about you. We know a lot about you, but where can we go to listen?
Well, you can always go on to Facebook and find Leo Sayer on there, and there's always info on there, and Twitter as well. You find Curly Geezer is my moniker on there. My car is registered geezer. So it's like everything. I'm the geezer. I'm the curly geezer. So there's leosayer.com. And in August, the first thing we do is we're doing 4 dates in Ireland, which complete the show that we started in 2020. And the shows that we started a tour, and of course, then the COVID restrictions came down, and I had to come back to Australia, and the band couldn't do it. So we're carrying on with that first, and then we've got I think it's about 28 dates or so in the UK, plus Ostend and one in Spain as well. So we'll have a few. It'll be a nice little trip, and I go home from that in November. So it's be a nice journey, and I'm looking forward to being back in the UK again as well. It's going to be fun.
A long time on the road. I wish you all the very best with the.
Yes, mate. Come to a show.
I will do. I'd love to. And lastly, I wish you all the very best with the latest album and all future endeavours. And I hope, fingers crossed, we'll see another 10 years of Leo Sayer.
Absolutely. Cheers, mate.